I came to my nephew's birthday party with all the presents, but no one was there. I called my brother, he laughed. Oh yeah, we moved the party, forgot to tell you, loser. My stomach dropped, I hung up without another word. Soon they came to regret it. I stood there on the front porch, arms full of brightly wrapped presents, feeling like an idiot. The wind picked up, making the ribbons flutter. My hands were starting to ache from holding everything, but I didn't move. I just stared at the door, waiting for something, anything that would tell me this wasn't real. Maybe I had the wrong day, maybe they were just running late, maybe someone would pull into the driveway any second laughing about some misunderstanding. But the house was dark, the driveway was empty, no decorations, no music, no signs of a birthday party at all. I shifted the weight of the pre-sentence against my hip and knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time, and rang the doorbell. For good measure, silence. I felt my stomach tighten as I fumbled my phone out of my pocket and scrolled through my messages. There was nothing from Luke, nothing from Melissa, and nothing from my parents. No change of plans, no heads up, not even a simple hey, just a reminder. Parties at a different location. I sucked in a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm as I pressed the call button. Luke picked up after a few rings, sounding half asleep. Oh yeah, we moved the party, he said lazily, like he had just remembered something mildly inconvenient. Then I heard it. That stupid smug chuckle. Forgot to tell you, loser. I felt the blood drain from my face for a second. I couldn't even speak. Forgot to tell me. I had spent weeks picking out the perfect gifts. I had taken the day off work, driven across town, stood outside in the cold with my arms full of presents, and they had just forgotten. They hadn't forgotten, they just didn't care. Luke was still chuckling on the other end, like this was the funniest thing that had ever happened, like I wasn't his sister standing outside an empty house with gifts for his son. I hung up without another word. I didn't ask where the party was. I didn't ask why. I just stood there gripping the presents a little too tightly, feeling a hollow sort of numbness settle in my chest. Then slowly I turned and walked back to my car. I placed the gifts on the passenger seat, shut the door, and sat there for a long moment, my hands resting on the steering wheel. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to feel. Anger, sadness. Maybe I should have been crying. Maybe I should have been screaming, but all I felt was tired. This wasn't new. Luke had been like this our whole lives, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one Mom and Dad always made excuses for, the one who was always given chance after chance while I was expected to take care of myself. I had spent my whole life trying to be the bigger person, trying to prove that I was a good sister, trying to earn a place in a family that never seemed to notice. When I was gone, I had thought things would be different with Ethan. He was just a kid he didn't know about. The years of favoritism, the years of being second place to a brother who had never once appreciated me. Ethan loved me. He ran to me every time I visited. He begged me to stay longer, asked me to read him stories, told me all about his favorite things. I did this for him, and yet here I was not invited, not even worth a text. I swallowed my throat tight and turned my phone over in my hands. I thought about texting my mom, telling her what happened, demanding to know why no one had bothered to tell me, but I already knew what she would say. Oh, Jenna, it was just a little mistake. You know how Luke is, like, always, just like when we were kids, and he stole my things just like when we were teenagers, and he made fun of me in front of his friends just like when we were adults, and I had to bail him out of financial mess after financial mess. While he never once thanked me, I wasn't the sibling they forgot. I was the sibling they never considered in the first place. I let out a slow breath and opened my bank app. Luke had been having a rough time lately, at least that's what my parents kept telling me. They said I should help him out, that families should support each other, that I should be grateful I was doing well enough to help. 4 months, I had been covering a portion of his rent, sending him money whenever he needed it, paying for Ethan's school trips and new clothes and little things Luke and Melissa couldn't afford. I tapped a few buttons, I closed the app, tossed my phone onto the passenger seat, and finally started the car. For the first time in years, I felt free, no guilt, no second guessing, just peace. I didn't send an angry text, I didn't call to demand an apology, I just let the silence speak for itself, and I waited. It didn't take long. A few days later my phone buzzed, a message from Mom. Hey sweetie, haven't heard from you in a while. Ethan was asking about you. Are you okay? I stared at the message, my lips pressing into a thin line. Now they noticed, now after they had their little party without me, after I was left standing outside in the cold, after Luke laughed in my face, now they cared. I typed out a response. Did Ethan ask about me before or after he opened all the presents I bought him? I hovered over the send button, then deleted it. I wasn't going to waste my time explaining myself to people who had never cared in the first place. I put my phone down, picked up my car keys, and walked out the door, not to chase after them, not to fix things, but to finally do something for myself. I didn't reply to my mom's text. I stared at it for a long time, rereading it over and over as If the words might change, as if she might suddenly say, "I'm sorry, Jenna, I didn't know I should have said something," but of course she didn't. "Hey, sweetie, haven't heard from you in a while. Ethan was asking about you. Are you okay?" That was all I got. No acknowledgement, no explanation, not even a weak excuse, just a casual, almost dismissive message, as if nothing had happened, as if I had simply been busy and fallen out of touch. Instead of being deliberately excluded from my own nephew's birthday, I put my phone down for years. I had been the one keeping in touch. I was the one who reached out first, the one who checked in, the one who made the plans, the one who never let too much time pass before sending a message or making a call. But now I was done. I let the silence stretch, and I waited. 3 days passed before my dad called. I almost didn't answer. I was tempted to let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see if for once he would acknowledge what had happened. "Hey Dad, hey kiddo," he said, his voice light, as if nothing was wrong. "Haven't talked to you in a bit. Everything good?" I leaned back on the couch, gripping the phone a little tighter. "Yeah, Dad, everything's great." There was a pause, a short, awkward silence that told me he had been expecting something different. I knew what he wanted. He wanted me to bring it up. He wanted me to say, "Hey, why didn't anyone tell me about Ethan's party?" so that he could brush it off, smooth things over, convince me it wasn't a big deal. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. "You sure?" he asked after a moment. "Your mom said she texted you, but she didn't hear back." Yep, another pause. He cleared his throat. Listen, your brother mentioned you haven't been answering his calls. He said you guys had a misunderstanding." Actually laughed. "A misunderstanding, right?" I took a deep breath, studying myself. "I don't think there was any misunderstanding, Dad." "Well, you know how Luke is," he said a little too quickly. "He jokes around, but he doesn't mean anything by it. He didn't actually forget to tell you." "Then why didn't he?" I cut in. "Why didn't anyone?" Silence. I could hear him shifting on the other end of the line, trying to figure out how to respond. "That's not the point," he finally said. "The point is you shouldn't let something like this drive a wedge between family." I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You shouldn't let something like this drive a wedge," like it was my fault, like I was the one who had done something wrong. I swallowed, the anger building in my throat. "Dad, I stood outside their house with an armful of presents. Do you have any idea how that felt?" His voice softened, like he thought I just needed some gentle coke. "And I get it, sweetheart, but you know Luke, he's never been the most responsible. He probably assumed someone else had told you." I let out a bitter laugh. "And that's supposed to make it better," he sighed. "I'm just saying, don't be so quick to cut ties over something small." "Something small?" I closed my eyes, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers ached. This wasn't small. This was every Christmas, where Luke got the expensive gifts while I got socks. This was every time he broke something of mine and my parents just shrugged it off. This was every family dinner where I paid the bill, every birthday where I made sure he had a gift even when he never got me one, every time I showed up for them while they barely remembered I existed. This wasn't small. This was just the final straw. "I'm not cutting ties," I said finally. "I'm just not putting in effort where it isn't appreciated." He was quiet for a moment. "You're being dramatic." I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Maybe I end the call before he could say anything else. I expected to feel guilty. I didn't. Instead, I felt lighter, and I realized something else too. My dad had called, my mom had texted, but Luke, nothing. He hadn't reached out once. I didn't hear from him until 2 days later when my phone rang with his name flashing across the screen. I didn't answer. A minute later, a text came through. "Damn, still mad? You're really going to be this petty?" I stared at the message, feeling a strange sense of detachment. A week ago, I probably would have sent some long-winded reply trying to explain why I was hurt, why I was upset, why he should at least try to care. No, I just turned off my phone and went about my day. 2 days later, my mom texted again. "Hey sweetheart, I hate to ask, but Luke is struggling with rent this month. Any chance you could help?" I actually laughed out loud. I hadn't responded to a single message, and this was what finally made her reach out again, not to apologize, not to acknowledge what would happened, but to ask for money. I typed back a single word, "No," and for the first time in my life it felt really, really good to say it. I didn't hear from them for a while after that. No calls, no texts, no guilt-tripping messages from my mom, no half-hearted attempts at smoothing things over from my dad, nothing. It was strange at first. For so long I had been the one holding everything together, the one keeping in touch, the one making the plans, the one who never let too much time pass before reaching out, and now I was doing nothing, and the silence was stretching longer than I expected. It confirmed something I had always feared, but never wanted to admit. If I wasn't the one putting in the effort, no one else would. Not my parents, not my brother. They could go days, weeks, maybe even months without checking in, without wondering what I was up to, without even noticing I was gone, and I was finally letting that sink in. But then, just when I was Getting used to the quiet, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't expected. Luke's wife. I stared at the screen for a second, debating whether to answer. I hadn't spoken to her directly since before the party. She never went out of her way to reach out, and if I was being honest, I didn't think she had much of an opinion about me either way. She wasn't cruel like Luke, but she wasn't exactly warm either. He just existed in the background. I let it ring until it went to voicemail a few seconds later. A text popped up. "Hey Jenna, hope you're doing okay. Ethan has been asking about you a lot. Just wanted to let you know." I read the message 3 times, my stomach twisting. Not a word about what had happened, no mention of the party, no apology, just a casual "Hey, your nephew misses you," as if I had simply disappeared for no reason. I didn't know what to say. Ethan was the only reason I had stuck around for as long as I had. He was the only one who actually made me feel wanted, and now he was caught in the middle. I thought about responding, but something stopped me. If Melissa really cared, she would have said something sooner. If my absence was really that noticeable, then she and Luke should have thought about that before leaving me out in the cold. I put my phone down and ignored the message. A day later, my mom texted again. "Hey sweetie, are you free this Sunday? We're all getting together for dinner. Hope to see you there." I had to laugh at that one. No mention of the party, no mention of anything, just another casual message, as if everything was fine, as if I was supposed to come running just because they had finally remembered I existed. I didn't reply. 2 hours later, my dad called. I let it ring, then Luke texted it. "Mom says you're ignoring everyone. You going to keep acting like a brat, or what?" There was the real reason they suddenly cared. They had noticed my absence, they had started feeling it, and now they didn't like it. I didn't respond, not to Luke, not to my parents, not to Melissa. I let the silence grow, and then a week later, everything shifted. I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw it, a post from my aunt, a picture from the Sunday dinner. Everyone was there, my parents, Melissa, cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone except me, and the caption, "So great to see the whole family together again." I stared at the photo, my stomach twisting, not because I wanted to be there, but because it was proof that they were just fine without me, proof that they hadn't even noticed I was gone. I closed the app and put my phone away, trying to push down the familiar sting of rejection. I should have expected it, I should have known. But then something happened that I didn't expect. A few hours later, my aunt texted me, "Hey Jenna, I just realized I didn't see you at dinner. Everything okay?" I read the message, my chest tightening. She had noticed, someone had actually noticed. I took a deep breath and typed back, "I wasn't invited." I didn't add anything else. I didn't try to explain. I just sent the truth. A few minutes later, she responded, "Are you serious? I thought you were just busy." I didn't reply, and then a little while later another text came in from my cousin Emma. "Hey Aunt Marie said you weren't at dinner. What happened?" And just like that, the cracks started to form. People were noticing, people were asking questions, and for the first time my family didn't have a good answer. The next morning my mom called. I let it go to voicemail, then my dad, then Melissa, then finally Luke. I didn't answer any of them, and then later that night a final text came in from my mom, "Jenna, we need to talk." I smiled to myself and turned off my phone. Now they wanted to talk, now they were worried. Now when it was too late, I didn't respond to my mom's text. I let it sit there unread, just like all the others. For years I had been the one to fix things, the one who reached out first, the one who swallowed my pride and let things go for the sake of keeping the family together. But I wasn't doing that anymore. I wasn't going to make it easy for them. If they wanted to talk, they were going to have to sit with the discomfort first. A few days passed, and then my dad called again. This time I answered. "Jenna," he said, his voice cautious, like he wasn't sure what kind of mood I'd be in. "Why haven't you been answering your mother?" I leaned back on my couch, keeping my tone neutral. "Did she tell you what happened?" There was a pause. "She said you were upset about Ethan's party." I let out a short laugh. "That's all she said." "Well, she said Luke forgot to tell you, and now you're making a big deal out of it." "Did she mention that I showed up to an empty house?" Another pause. "That I stood outside holding presents like an idiot," he sighed. "Jenna, come on." That Luke laughed in my face and called me a loser. My dad was quiet for a long time. I could picture him sitting in his chair, rubbing his temple, trying to figure out how to smooth this over without actually taking any responsibility. Finally, he said, "Your mom feels really bad about it." I almost laughed again. "My mom, not Luke. She's trying to fix things. Fix things." That was what this was really about, not making it right, not an actual apology, just fixing things enough so that I'd go back to playing my role. "So that's why you're calling," I said, "because Mom doesn't like that people are asking questions." He let out another sigh, the kind that said was making this harder than it needed to be. "Jenna, don't do this. Do what make this into something bigger than it is. You know how Luke is, he jokes around." "I'm done making excuses for him," I said, cutting him off. "And I'm done being the one who always has to be the bigger person. No one in this family ever does that For me, silence, and then with that same tired voice he said, "So, what do you want?" I almost felt bad for him in that moment. He wasn't used to this. He wasn't used to me standing my ground. He thought if he could just talk to me long enough, I'd let it go, move on like I always did, but I wasn't playing that role anymore. "I don't want anything," I said, simply, "I just want you to see things for what they're." He didn't know what to do with that. After a long pause, he mumbled, "I'll talk to your mother then." He hung up. I didn't expect much to come from that conversation, but a few hours later my phone rang again. This time it was my mom. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. "Jenna, please call me back. I don't want this to get worse than it already is." I stared at my phone, shaking my head. Worse than it already is. Worse for who? For me or for them? Because from where I was standing, they were the ones struggling. I was doing just fine. The next day I woke up to a text from Melissa. "Hey, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but Luke is really upset. Can you at least talk to him?" I rolled my eyes. He was upset. He was upset. I had spent years doing everything I could to be a good sister. I had spent that entire morning looking forward to Ethan's party, excited to see him, excited to celebrate. I had stood outside in the cold with my arms full of gifts, only to be laughed at and called a loser, and Luke was upset. I ignored the text. A few hours later, another message came through, this time from Luke himself. "Are you seriously still mad? Get over it." That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he had done, just more dismissal, and that was all I needed to see. I didn't respond. A week passed, then the text slowed down. The calls became less frequent, and then one night I got a message from my aunt. "Hey, are you coming to Grandma's birthday next weekend? Haven't seen you in forever." I stared at the text, my chest tightening. This was it, another big family gathering, another chance for them to leave me out. I waited for my parents to reach out. I waited for Luke to say something. Nothing. So I made my decision. I texted my aunt back, "Yeah, I'll be there." I didn't tell anyone else. I didn't ask permission. I just showed up. When I walked into the restaurant, I could feel the shift immediately. Some of my cousin greeted me happily, genuinely excited to see me. My aunt pulled me into a hug, but my mom, she looked surprised, like she hadn't expected me to actually come. Luke and Melissa were sitting at the far end of the table. Luke barely looked at me. Melissa gave me a tight, uncomfortable smile, and just like that I realized they weren't in control anymore. They couldn't leave me out of this when I was here, and they were just going to have to deal with it. My mom tried to act like nothing was wrong, talking to me like normal, but I could tell she was uncomfortable. She was waiting for me to break to say something first to smooth things over for her, but I didn't. I just sat there, ate my food, talked to the relatives who actually cared, and ignored the rest, and for the first time they were the ones feeling left out. After dinner, as people were starting to leave, my dad pulled me aside. "You should talk to your brother," he said. I met his eyes, calm and steady. Why? He blinked like he hadn't expected me to ask that. "Because this is ridiculous," he said. "Your family." I smiled. "Funny, that's what I used to think too." And then I walked away. I left without saying goodbye to Luke, without giving my mom the reassurance she was looking for, without fixing anything for them. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. I felt free.